take her away. I don't want to see her.
Kamsi. So because of fame, you have forgotten me, right?
Kamsi and Amarachi grew up in the same dusty compound where evening generators hummed like tired insects and dreams were louder than reality. As children, they sat on cracked concrete steps, clapping rhythms on their thighs, while Amarachi sang with a voice so clear it made neighbors pause mid-argument. "Amara, your voice is a gift," Kamsi would say, eyes shining with admiration, even though her own voice often cracked or wandered off key. Amarachi would laugh, brushing it off. "Gift or not, we'll both make it. You will learn. We'll sing together." And Kamsi believed her because Amarachi always sounded sure, like someone destiny had already whispered secrets to. Every night after school, they practiced under the mango tree. Amarachi wrote songs in a torn notebook, lyrics about hope, hunger, love, and escape. Kamsi watched closely, copying how Amarachi breathed, how she held notes, how she poured emotion into every word. "If I become a star," Amarachi once joked, nudging Kamsi playfully, "you will be my backup singer." They both burst into laughter, the kind that comes from innocence, not knowing how cruel the future could be. In that moment, they were equals, two girls chasing one shining dream, unaware that the dream would soon choose only one. As the years passed, Amarachi's voice grew stronger, richer, like it was aging into something powerful, while Kamsi's voice improved slowly through effort and imitation. Amarachi never mocked her. Instead, she corrected her gently. "No, Kamsi, feel the note, don't fight it," she'd say, placing a hand on her chest. Kamsi nodded, grateful, but somewhere deep inside her, gratitude began to mix with something darker. Why did singing come so easily to Amarachi? Why did people stop to listen when she sang, but only smiled politely when Kamsi tried? Sometimes, when Amarachi wasn't around, Kamsi sang the songs alone, whispering the lyrics Amarachi had written as if they were prayers meant just for her. One day, she told her reflection, "They'll hear me too." The dream that once felt shared slowly became a quiet competition in her heart. Amarachi still trusted her completely, still shared every lyric, every melody, every plan. She didn't notice how Kamsi listened less like a friend and more like someone taking notes for survival. University life swallowed them whole. Crowded hostels, noisy hallways, and endless lectures, but music remained their escape. One afternoon, as students rushed past the notice board, Amarachi froze. Her eyes widened, her breath caught, and then she screamed, "Kamsi! Kamsi!" People turned to stare as she jumped excitedly. "Look! A national singing competition! This is it! This is my chance!" Her hands trembled as she touched the poster, as if it might disappear. Kamsi forced a smile. "This is your moment," she said softly, though her chest tightened painfully. From that day, Amarachi practiced like her life depended on it. Morning, afternoon, night, her voice echoed through empty classrooms and quiet corridors. Kamsi stayed beside her, correcting pitch, clapping encouragement, pretending not to feel the ache growing inside her. "You are going to blow their minds," Kamsi said one night. Amarachi hugged her tightly. "I couldn't do this without you," she replied. Those words stabbed deeper than silence because Kamsi knew she didn't want to be behind Amarachi anymore. She wanted to stand where the light shone brightest. The audition hall buzzed with nervous energy, voices warming up, feet pacing, dreams shaking. Amarachi clutched her audition number like it was gold, while Kamsi stood beside her, unusually quiet. "I feel pressed. Please hold my number and bag. I'll be quick." Amarachi nodded, watching her disappear into the restroom. The moment stretched. The hall echoed. Then the announcer called, "Next contestant, number 47." Kamsi's heart slammed violently. That was Amarachi's number. Her hands shook as she looked at the number, then at the stage, then back at the restroom. This is fate, a voice whispered inside. Before she could stop herself, she pinned the number to her chest. Just as Amarachi came running out, breathless, she saw it. Kamsi on stage, microphone in hand. "Kamsi!" Amarachi mouthed desperately, waving her hands. "Calm down!" But Kamsi avoided her eyes, and then she began to sing. The first note silenced the room. Kamsi sang Amarachi's song, every lyric, every emotion, stolen and repurposed. Amarachi stood frozen, tears burning her eyes as recognition hit her like a slap. That's my song! Her knees weakened. She remembered writing those words by candlelight, sharing them with trust, never imagining betrayal could wear her best friend's face. "Stop her!" she cried to no one, but the judges leaned forward, enchanted. When Kamsi finished, the room erupted in applause. One judge smiled broadly. "That song, it's original, yes?" Kamsi swallowed, then nodded. "Yes, sir." Amarachi's heart shattered completely at that lie. She watched as Kamsi was selected, praised, celebrated. The girl who once laughed beside her under a mango tree was now walking towards fame on stolen dreams. Amarachi didn't cry out. She simply turned and walked away, carrying a pain too heavy for screams. Kamsi's rise was fast and unforgiving. Interviews, recordings, bright lights, everything Amarachi had dreamed of now belonged to someone else. She watched from afar, avoiding mirrors and music alike. Singing felt like reopening a wound. Meanwhile, Kamsi convinced herself she deserved it. "I worked hard too," she told herself at night. It wasn't only her dream, yet guilt followed her like a shadow she couldn't escape. Years passed. Amarachi withdrew from the world, choosing silence over bitterness. She kept her notebooks locked away, her voice hidden, but the truth refused to stay buried. So one day, Kamsi went for an interview. The studio lights glowed brightly as Kamsi sat confidently before the interviewer, her face carefully made up, her smile polished and practiced. "So, Kamsi, what inspired your journey into music?" the interviewer said warmly. Kamsi laughed softly, adjusting the microphone. "I've always loved singing," she replied. "It has been my dream since I was a child. Music is my life." The audience applauded. At that very moment, in a quiet room miles away, Amarachi sat on a worn couch, staring at the television screen. Her heart sank with every word Kamsi spoke. "Always loved singing? Since when?" Amarachi whispered bitterly. Not once did Kamsi mention shared dreams, late-night practices, or the friend who taught her how to sing. It was as if Amarachi had never existed. "So this is how you erase me," Amarachi murmured bitterly, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You just pack me aside like I was nothing." Days later, Amarachi heard that Kamsi was performing live at a grand concert hall, singing one of the very songs Amarachi had written long ago. Something inside her refused to stay silent anymore. She went there, standing among the crowd as Kamsi's voice filled the hall, carrying words that were born from Amarachi's pain and hope. Unable to hold herself back, Amarachi pushed forward. "Kamsi! Kamsi!" she called out, her voice trembling but loud enough to cut through the music. Kamsi turned, her eyes meeting Amarachi's for a brief second, cold, distant, unfamiliar. She leaned towards her bodyguard and said sharply, "Take her away. I don't want to see her." As the guards grabbed her, Amarachi shouted with all the strength left in her, "Kamsi, so because of fame you have forgotten me, right?" The hall fell into uneasy murmurs. Amarachi straightened herself, wiped her tears, and said firmly, "I leave everything in God's hands." Then she turned and walked away, leaving behind the lights, the lies, and the stolen dream. After that night, things did not fall apart immediately for Kamsi. The applause continued, the shows sold out, and her name still trended across screens. But something unseen had begun to move. During rehearsals, her voice started failing her at odd moments, cracking where it never used to.
"You need rest," her manager warned, worry lining his face. At home, sleep abandoned her. Amarachi's words echoed in her mind, "I leave everything in God's hands." Kamsi would wake up sweating, her heart racing, feeling watched by a justice she could not escape. "Why do I feel like this?" she whispered one night, staring at her reflection. The girl looking back at her no longer looked victorious, she looked afraid. Fame had lifted her high, but peace had quietly left her. Meanwhile, without noise or announcement, doors began to open for Amarachi. A small church invited her to sing. She almost refused, her hands shaking. "Just sing as you used to," the pastor encouraged gently. When Amarachi opened her mouth, the room fell silent. Her voice carried honesty, pain, and faith, something money could not buy. Someone recorded it. The video spread slowly, then widely, touching hearts in places Kamsi's polished performances never reached. People asked, "Who is this woman? And why does her song feel so real?" Amarachi smiled softly, lifting her eyes upward. "God sees," she whispered. And without shouting, without revenge, justice began to take its rightful place, lifting the wounded and troubling the conscience of the one who had risen on stolen ground. Amarachi's life took a new direction the day she surrendered her voice completely to God. No longer chasing stages filled with blinding lights, she sang in churches, open crusades, and small prayer gatherings where sincerity mattered more than fame. Her songs were no longer about dreams stolen or hearts broken, but about healing, forgiveness, and hope. People felt God's presence when she sang, and they began to invite her from city to city. Radios played her worship songs. Testimonies followed her wherever she went. And soon, her name became known not as a victim of betrayal, but as a gospel singer whose voice carried peace. Amarachi never advertised herself. She simply sang, and God did the lifting. "This is not my doing," she often said humbly. "It is grace." And the fame that came this time did not disturb her spirit because it was rooted in purpose, not pain. While Amarachi rose quietly, Kamsi's world slowly crumbled. She had exhausted every song she stole, every lyric that once carried her career. Studios demanded new music, but nothing came. "Where is the magic?" producers asked impatiently. Her performances were cancelled, endorsements withdrawn, and the crowd that once screamed her name grew silent. Desperate and alone, Kamsi remembered the one place she never thought she would return to, the church where Amarachi now worshipped. One Sunday morning, Amarachi turned after service and froze. "Kamsi," she said in disbelief, "what are you doing here? Where is your bodyguard?" Kamsi's eyes filled with tears. Her voice shook as she stammered, I am sorry, Amarachi." She dropped to her knees before everyone. "I allowed greed to get the best part of me. I destroyed us." The church fell silent as Grace stood face to face with repentance. Amarachi stepped forward slowly, her heart pounding as she looked at Kamsi kneeling on the cold church floor. The memories rushed back, the laughter under the mango tree, the stolen song, the years of silence, but they no longer carried poison. She reached out her hand gently and said, "Please, Kamsi, stand up." The entire church watched, breath held. "I forgave you a long time ago," Amarachi continued, her voice calm but firm. "I chose forgiveness the day I handed my pain over to God. Carrying hatred was heavier than the betrayal." Tears streamed down Kamsi's face as she lifted her head, unable to meet Amarachi's eyes. "I didn't deserve it," she whispered. Amarachi shook her head softly. "Forgiveness is not about what you deserve. It is about the freedom God gave me." Kamsi slowly rose to her feet, trembling, as murmurs filled the church. Amarachi placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and added, "What was broken between us cannot return to what it was, but it can heal into something honest." She turned to the congregation and said quietly, "Let this be a lesson. Talent without character will fail, but grace can still rebuild a life." The pastor nodded in silence, and the church erupted into soft prayers instead of applause. In that sacred moment, justice and mercy stood together, not as enemies, but as God's perfect balance. After some days, the media had gathered for what was supposed to be Kamsi's comeback press conference. Cameras flashed, reporters leant forward, and whispers filled the hall. Kamsi stepped onto the stage without glamour, no designer dress, no bodyguards, no confident smile. Her hands trembled as she held the microphone. "Before I sing," she said quietly, "there is something the world must hear." The room grew still. "I did not build my career on truth," she continued, her voice breaking. "I stole songs that were not mine. I stole a dream that belonged to my childhood friend, Amarachi." Gas echoed through the hall. Reporters froze, pens mid-air. "She taught me how to sing. She wrote the songs that made me famous. When I chose greed over loyalty, I lost my soul." Tears streamed down her face. "Today, I return every credit, every right, every song, because no fame is worth a lie." The confession spread like wildfire before she even left the stage. Across the city, Amarachi watched the broadcast in silence, her hands clasped tightly. She closed her eyes as Kamsi's words poured out, not with bitterness, but with relief. For the first time, the truth stood in daylight. Churches, radios, and social media buzzed with one name, not in scandal, but in honor. Amarachi was invited to speak, not to accuse, but to testify. When she finally sang that night, her voice carried forgiveness that stunned the world. "God restores what man destroys," she said softly. And as the applause rose, it was clear. One woman lost fame to find humility, and the other lost everything only to gain purpose. The dream was no longer stolen. It was redeemed. Years later, Amarachi stood on a simple stage at a global gospel concert, her hair wrapped modestly, her eyes calm and full of light. She no longer chased applause, yet it followed her everywhere. Her songs were sung in churches, homes, and hospitals by people who didn't even know her story, only the peace her voice carried. After every performance, she bowed her head and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. The girl whose dream was once stolen had become a woman whose purpose could never be taken. Kamsi lived a quieter life now. No flashing cameras, no screaming fans. She taught music to children in a small community center, reminding them gently, talent grows best in truth. Sometimes she watched Amarachi sing on television, not with envy, but with respect and remorse. She never tried to return to the spotlight. Some lessons, she knew, were not meant to be escaped, but to be lived with, humbled by grace and transformed by time.
If you felt every word of this story, then stay with me, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so when the next story is born, you will be right here to experience it from the very first line.